Good day to all speakers, organizers, panelists, participants, colleagues in the academy. I'm privileged to be part of this international integrated research conference. Our study is entitled Survival Sex, Perceptions and Prospects for Interventions, ETIC Approach. Researchers, Dr. Maria Lourdes Rosana E. Deguzman, Program Coordinator of the Philippine General Hospital Women's Desk and Professor of the Department of Psychiatry, University of the Philippines, College of Medicine. Yours truly from the West Visayas State University, and Dr. Ricky Becodo, Chair, Development Communication Division, College of Communication, and Director of the University Extension and Development Center, West Visayas State University. The study was conducted in Iloilo City, Western Visayas, Philippines. Education comes as a very high price for the young girls who come from a disadvantaged background and who dream of uplifting the plight of their poor families. Hopefully, when they get to finish school, they will be able to support themselves, contribute to the daily expenses of their families, and even send a younger sibling to school. To be able to pay for their own education and daily allowance, some of these young girls have resorted to survival sex. Survival sex refers to a transactional relationship of participating in sexual acts in exchange for money, sex, drugs, food, shelter, or any other daily means of survival. It encompasses sex as a work as well as other forms of small scale money making and in the informal sector, such as selling homemade goods, brewing illicit beer or liquor, and petty trade and other crimes. Survival sex is about getting by in a world of poverty, prejudice, and disempowerment. As one woman put it, this is how we survive. The term is commonly used by the sex, trade, and poverty researchers and aid workers throughout the world. In the Philippines, survival sex is prostitution engaged by young women because of extreme poverty. It describes the practice of marginalized people, particularly young adolescents, trading sex not limited to basic needs, but to get easy money to pay for their daily allowance, for their educational needs, and even to comforts and luxury items that their own poor families will never be able to afford. These young women and adolescents are motivated to engage in survival sex when they have no other option. Given their economically disadvantaged position, they do not have viable alternative means of paying not only for their basic needs, but their educational needs and personal needs. Prevalence estimates of the proportion of runaway and homeless youths who engage in survival sex range from 10% to 50%, with variation in estimates due to the source of data, sampling strategies, age range of respondents, and profiles involved in survival sex. The issue of survival sex, engaging sex for material and financial support, is a practice largely associated with young women experiencing homelessness. The reasons for homelessness of young people reveal that most of them have the primary conflict with their parents as the primary reason for their homelessness, which is related to dysfunctional families, sexual activity and abuse, pregnancy, sexual orientation, school problems, and peer pressure, together with alcohol and drug use. Survival sex is also common in internally displaced people in armed conflict areas, in refugee camps, in Uganda, where it was reported in 2005 that the women and girls were engaging in survival sex with other camp residents, local defense personnel, and government soldiers in exchange of the protection and survival of their own families. Recently, it was uncovered that there was an increased number of students engaging in survival sex to pay for their educational needs given the high price or the high cost of tuition and other school fees. The influence of consumerism and the inculcation of a contraceptive mentality have also justified their desire to want to have more. That is, a new gadget, beauty products, clothes, eating in fancy places. Since it is easy money with no obligation nor liability and responsibility, the students can have anything they may need and want. Based on random interviews of taxi drivers, they have acknowledged that they have been bringing quite a number of young girls, usually after school, even some of them wearing their school uniform and school IDs, to motels and lodging houses in Iloilo City, accompanied by a male consort. According to them, the students engage in survival sex with clients in exchange for money that they can use to pay the needed balance for their tuition fee or sometimes to satisfy their vanity or material needs. The incidence of survival sex becomes quite rampant, especially during midterms and final exams of the academic year. Students engaging in survival sex is a clear manifestation of a commercialized educational system in the Philippines. The main objective of the study is to determine the knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions of taxi drivers on young passengers who frequent motels within Iloilo City. Specifically, it aims to determine the knowledge and attitude of the taxi drivers in Iloilo City about survival sex and to assess their personal experiences and perceptions regarding the profile of passengers and their companions who were brought to motels, which age of their passengers, the frequency of the visits, the number of passengers brought to motels in 1 week, and lastly, determine the taxi driver's stand on the issue. The research design will make use of the ETIC approach. The ETIC approach realizes that the members of the culture often are too involved in what they are doing to interpret their cultures impartially. When using the approach, the researcher is the one who emphasizes what is considered important. An ethic account is a description of a behavior or belief by a social analyst or scientific observer in terms that can be applied across cultures. That is, an ethic account attempts to be culturally neutral, limiting any ethnocentric, political, and or cultural bias or alienation by the observer. Methodology, so the study design. This is a descriptive cross-sectional study which made use of survey questionnaires of key informant interview of taxi drivers regarding their knowledge about survival sex in the city. Basically, the research examined the phenomenon through an ethic lens, sample size, and computation. The participants were chosen through convenient sampling. A total of 95 taxi drivers gave their informed consent to respond to the survey questionnaire of survival sex among young women in Iloilo. An interview questionnaire was designed to gather the responses of taxi drivers. The primary investigator requested the help of junior students to gather such information from the taxi drivers. They were trained as to the objective of the research and the process of data collection. The research protocol is guided by the Data Privacy Act of 2012. The protocol informed consent and questionnaires were submitted to the National Ethics Review Committee for review and approval. The respondents were oriented on the research title, study objectives and significance of the research, and procedures including the study sites and sample size using the preferred vernacular. They were informed that their participation will be based only on their voluntary informed decision and that they can withdraw, anytime without any prejudice on the health, services, and benefits they are receiving. They were also informed that all information which they provided during the interview will be kept confidential and that there will be identifying marks on the questionnaires. The informed consent form was also introduced to them for them to read and understand. If they consent to participate, they were asked to sign their approval in the informed consent form. A total of 95 respondents were interviewed. As to the social demographic profile of the respondents, all of them were males with an age range of 25 to 60 years old. As to the length of service, majority of the respondents were already experienced taxi drivers, with 47% or 45 respondents having below 5 years of work experience, while 53% or 50 respondents with above 5 years. Regarding the profile of the taxi drivers, experience in bringing passengers to lodging houses, motels within Iloilo City, 99% or 94 of the taxi drivers had brought young women passengers to motels within Iloilo City. Based on the taxi driver's observation as to the profile of their passengers, young women, and their companions who were brought to the lodging houses and motels, out of the 215 persons brought to the lodging houses and motels, 57% were college students, ages or below 23 years old, 21%, 25 to 40 years old, and 22 were 40 and above years old. The profile of the companions were 50% of the same age as the college students and 50 were noted to be older. It was observed that the most frequent passengers to the motels were college students wearing their school uniforms. Half of the number of the frequent companions of the students to the lodging houses or motels were also students. As to the frequency of visits and the number of passengers brought to motels in 1 week, out of the 87 frequent visits to the motels, the taxi drivers reported that they brought 67% of their passengers on a daily basis, from Mondays to Fridays, 18% on weekends, and 21% on holidays. After the survey questionnaires was done, the taxi drivers were asked regarding their stand on survival sex. Majority of the drivers recommended strong family ties, discipline at home, um, good upbringing, partnership with the local government unit so that they take action, and the creation of a city ordinance to protect young women. The findings from this study suggest that survival sex is being perceived as a lucrative economic strategy, luring young women in the study community, though the research does not involve primary data collection from the population at risk, but from key informant interviews of taxi drivers with direct contact with the victims of survival sex. Through survival sex, the young women are able to meet their subsistence and consumption needs, provide for their families, finish school, and maybe even enjoy the leisure of life. Despite these perceived benefits, the risk behavior was also shown to create opportunities for sexual abuse of the young women, put them at risk for sexually transmitted diseases because of unprotected sex, increase morbidity in women due to early or unwanted pregnancy, and increase the risk of cervical cancer given their involvement of having sex with multiple partners. This is a wake-up call for the protection of the rights of women and children with the RA 9262 Public Act Anti-Violence Against Women and Children that will need the involvement of multiple stakeholders to address the public health concern. The study highlights the urgent need to develop an intensive and long-term service that provide alternatives to survival sex as a means of meeting economic needs. All stakeholders, government, family, school, should work together to address this concern. The issue had been raised to the local government officials to address the public health problem of violence against women and children. As a response, the local government created a city ordinance regulating the operation of lodging houses, pension houses, inns, motels, apartels, and other similar establishments in the city of Iloilo and provide mechanisms, therefore, and other purposes to promote youth welfare. The ordinance was implemented so as to regulate the operation of the lodging houses and the like by not allowing the entry of 18-year-old and below. This will be affirmed by requesting an identification card from the client, and the ordinance also included the banning and proliferation of pornographic materials in the city like malls. There was a partnership with the Office of the Mayor, City of Iloilo, Task Force Moral Recovery, partnership with the Iloilo City Police, and partnership with the Department of Social Welfare and Development Women's Desk. Other recommendations include strengthening of family ties with government-supported campaigns among the youth, for example, through Love Waits Philippines, the provision of scholarship, student loans for jobs and livelihood opportunities for young people so as to be able to support themselves in their schooling and education, the need to create awareness through information campaigns and IEC materials on anti-violence against women and children and survival sex. Thank you very much. Let's all work together to protect our youth and strengthen family ties in our own family and that of the others. Good day to everyone. Thank you very much.